What's up you guys, it's Bart here. The average British person retires at the age of around 64 years old with a median net worth of £300,000. Now, for the majority of our lives, we've been told by our friends, family, teachers that one day, after we've worked for about 40 years, we'll be able to retire and enjoy the freedom that we've been looking forward to for such a long time in our 60s. For a very long time, I, like most people, believed that to be successful in life and in order to succeed, I need to go to university, get myself a secure job, work from 9 till 5 every single day for 40 years, so that when I do hit my 60s, I'd be allowed some freedom, assuming that I've done everything I was told to do. But today in this video, I'd like to question some of the norms that society has led us to believe, and challenge the view that everybody must work for such a long time in a secure job in order to retire. And I understand that this might not line up with everybody's beliefs, and that's completely fine. We're all different, and we all are interested in different things. But I certainly am interested in challenging this perspective and this social norm as such, that society has been teaching us and has led us to believe to be so true. I've planned to essentially challenge what we've been told and dump my thoughts into this video about the concept of retiring early and why, in my opinion, it is most certainly possible. From a personal viewpoint, the main reason as to why I'm so into these topics is because I aim to build a lot of wealth from a very young age so that I can enjoy the freedom that I feel that everyone actually deserves in life, and so that I can wake up in the mornings and decide what I'm going to do, instead of letting a corporate job decide that for me or a boss tell me what to do. As always, hit the like button to support this channel and help me push it out to more people. So if you believe in communism or anything of the similar type, then this might not be for you. But the truth is, retiring early doesn't come down to how many years you've worked or how long you spent at school or anything like that. It comes down to one simple thing, and that's money. It's assets. It's how much wealth do you have, and are you able to live off that wealth for the rest of your life? Now, obviously we have things like state pensions or welfare systems here in the UK that will help you if you need it. However, in a capitalist society like we have here in the UK, you're pretty much on your own when it comes to retirement, and to get those benefits that I've just listed, you're probably going to have to wait those 60 years or be in a really bad place. So it really is important, in my opinion, that people do educate themselves on wealth and personal finances, so that we can essentially take back control of our lives at a much earlier date than perhaps the 64th birthday of your life. Now, this is something that I've been researching for a large chunk of the last decade, really, and I want to stress that I'm not by no way trying to come off pretentious here or try to sell you something or make you believe something that isn't actually possible just for the sake of a video, because I'm sure there are people that have looked at this, the title of this video, and thought, well, it isn't possible to retire in your 20s or anything like that, seeing that most people start working in their 20s, perhaps at the age of 21 or 23, depending on when you finish university. So I know that some people will think that this is impossible, and I'm not trying to sell you something that you don't believe in, but if you listen to what I have to say and what I've researched, then you might understand how and why this actually might be possible for certain people. So the first thing I'd like to focus on here is understanding the purpose of work in the first place. Now, this seems simple enough to understand, but I feel like it's important that we cover this and understand this properly, so that everything can come together in the latter part of this video. So the simplest way of explaining the purpose of work would be to trace back all the way into history, perhaps even into the Stone Age, where people would work to support themselves, their families, or perhaps a small community of people around them. These people worked to provide value, and in return they'd get water, food, materials, and things that essentially kept them alive. These days the concept isn't much different. We go to work to make money to buy things that keep us alive. The only difference is that there's more parts to the jigsaw. For example, back in the day, people would work to get materials to build their own shelter. These days, we work to get money in order to purchase a property. There are just more parts to the puzzle, but the pure raw concept of money remains the same. We work in order to provide value, in order to then support ourselves and those around us. We work to provide value. So to put that into context, if you were to walk into the woods right now and sit down on a rock for the next 40 years, the likelihood is you'd probably die within the next few days, because you're not providing any value to the world, in which for exchange you get the means to survive, if that makes sense. Now obviously that's an extreme example, but you get the gist. So the next key thing to understand about why people actually work is that there are driving forces behind why people work. Now this is where it might differ from person to person, but personally for me, and probably for a lot of people that are watching this video, because I'd assume that we are quite like-minded, it really comes down to two main driving forces and two main key factors, and one of them is to do with the pain side and one of them is to do with the pleasure side. So from the pain side of the driving force here, for me it's the idea of not having to work 40 years at a job that I will most likely not enjoy just in order to survive. Now there will probably be jobs out there that I would enjoy, but you know, to make a lot of money, 9 times out of 10 you will be choosing a path that you might not enjoy it to the maximum. A lot of people would enjoy, for example, art students might enjoy sitting there making artwork or painting. However, a lot of them come to a point in their life where they realise that this isn't a sustainable career, and they choose to go into a corporate job. So they choose the path that money takes them on instead of choosing the path that their passions take them on. So that's the pain side of me. It's trying to avoid that, and I'll go into how I plan on doing that later on in this video, but that's the pain driving force for me. It's just avoiding having that 40 years of my life where I'm working at a job that I most likely am not enjoying, just in order to survive. And on the pleasure side of it, it's having the freedom to do what I want to do in my 30s, 40s and 50s. It's having the ability to go to a midweek game with maybe one of my children or one of my friends when I'm older, go to a football game, enjoy myself, and not have to ask my boss to do anything like take a spontaneous holiday on a Wednesday afternoon and go away for a week because an opportunity has come up or I've just felt like doing it, right? I don't want to have to go to someone to ask to do that and be limited to do so perhaps only once or twice a year. So that's the pleasure side of the driving force for me. I want to have that freedom to experience and explore life in a way that fulfills me personally, rather than constraining myself to what society says is the correct way of living your life. Okay, so in terms of actually getting there, I'd like to introduce the concept of producing more units of value as a human over a shorter period of time. And what I mean by that is, well, let's take a person, for example, that works from the age of 22 to the age of 62. That's 40 years of work. And in those 40 years of work, they have a steady income and a secure job that gives them the money and the means to live a normal and steady, happy life. Happy in inverted commas. Now I won't use money to illustrate this, but if we look at this graph here, now what if we could provide the same amount of value but in a shorter period of time? So instead of taking 40 years to do it, we take 10 years to do it, and instead of creating 10 units of value per year, we're creating 40. So we've done what the person A has done in 40 years and done it in 10 years, making the process 4 times shorter and obviously taking 30 years of our working lifetime. Now don't get me wrong, in practice obviously this is a lot more difficult than just saying it and showing you a little graph, but the key message behind what I'm trying to say here is that if you really do concentrate yourself over the next 10 years or so, the likelihood is humans are able to produce the same amount of value someone else does over 40 years instead, if you just concentrate and condense the amount of value you're putting into these 10 years. It is most definitely possible. Now doing so will allow you to retire those 30 years earlier, as you're providing the same amount of value, but instead it's just not so spread out, if that makes sense. It's just concentrated into those 10 years. So instead of taking it easy and just spreading it out over those 40 years, you really put the work in and you concentrate into those 10 years, and that way you're in a position to retire 30 years earlier because you have concentrated and condensed the amount of value you produce as a human into those 10 years. So this could be as simple as presenting it using savings. Someone that saves £10 a week and someone that saves £50 per week, they're saving 5 times more, right? They're going to save up more money in a shorter period of time. This is the same concept. This is what I'm trying to say with the value that you provide as a human. Obviously, value is very subjective, what people think is value, but over that 10-year period of time, you're able to provide more value than someone does than an average person does in their 10 years, and that way you're able to retire early. Now, I promise this will all come together and make sense in just a second. It can be quite confusing to understand, especially as I'm saying it. You know, I'm no expert, and I'm just trying to understand it myself as well whilst I'm talking to this camera, but I promise it will all come together in just a second. Now, before we continue, I feel like it's really important to emphasize that the goal here is not to retire in your 20s or 30s and simply relax and do nothing for the rest of your life. That's not how life works, and I genuinely don't think that anyone would be comfortable doing that, as you'd simply get bored and go back to work. Instead, it's about the opportunities that having that financial freedom in your 30s or 40s or 50s opens up to you as an individual to experience life in a different way. Now, I'm sure we're all switched on enough here to think of ways in which that is true, but the main point here is the opportunities. It's the opportunities to live your life how you feel is fit in your 20s, 30s or 40s, rather than being stuck in the same place for a very long time. It's what's often referred to as hybrid retirement. So it's having the ability to retire early but still engaging in part-time work or doing something that I truly enjoy, and it's basically what I'm working towards here. So, for example, just to put it into a bit more of a personal perspective, I am a big fan of football. I really enjoy the sport, I really enjoy the culture and the sort of camaraderie within football, the community aspect, everything really about it, and I'd love to be able to spend my time enjoying football in the form of a referee. For example, I am a football referee and make a little side income by doing so, but it's not something that pays the bills, right? It's something that I do purely out of enjoyment. I could do it for free, and it really is good that I'm doing something that I really do enjoy and that I really do consider a hobby, and still actually getting paid a little bit for it. So that's obviously a positive, but that's not the main point here. The point is that if I set myself up financially properly, I wouldn't even have to get to the top as a football referee. I could continue working in a semi-professional game and really just enjoy my time and live off of my investments that I'm trying to touch upon here. So that's more of a personal sort of touch on it from my perspective, and you know, that's sort of the plan for now. I feel like as long as I'm able to carry on with my YouTube channel and my refereeing in football, and you know, and build up my investments alongside this, obviously at this point I'm not in a position to do that, just to focus on YouTube, where you know it doesn't pay me anything at this stage, and refereeing, where that isn't obviously something to live off of at this stage. But in the future, that's what I see as a long-term goal. Now obviously things change, and that could change as well, you know. When I was younger, I wanted to be a vet, and all sorts of things keep changing as the world changes, as you grow and as you learn more as a person. But the main concept really remains the same for me. In the future, I want to have that foundation of wealth underneath me that allows me to pursue my passions and pursue my sort of what I'm interested in as a person as life goes by. The main difference here is that I'm no longer having to follow money at this point. I'm following something that I believe in, something that I enjoy, and I can walk away from a job at any given point in time and stop working. So that brings us back to the main point of creating more value over a shorter period of time. And I only really have 2 steps that are going to help me achieve that within the next 10 years or so. So the first one is almost plain defense and living way below my means and lowering my expenses as much as I can, which sort of relates to some of my older videos on the channel. Instead of following the usual social norm and keeping up with the Kardashians, I'll be looking to avoid lifestyle inflation and not matching my outgoings to my income, and that way I'll be in a position whereby I'm able to save and invest most of my income, which will be a fundamental step towards achieving this financial freedom in the future and laying down the foundations for early retirement. And that leads me on to my second step nicely, which is the complete opposite, playing offense. What I mean by that is I can't just pinch at every single penny and save it and put it into a savings account, because that'll make my goals very hard for me. Instead, what I want to do is put that money to work alongside myself by saving and investing it instead of just letting it sit there. And that way I can increase my income exponentially over the next 10 years or so, with hopefully a good increase year on year, which will help me get to where I want to be. By doing so, I'll be able to build up my assets to a level in which I am able to live off of them and live off of the income that my assets produce. This is something that is known as the 4% rule, which is essentially where your assets grow by 8% per year, which would be a good return, and you only pull out around 3% as your income. That way your assets are still growing at a faster rate than the money that you're pulling out, or the income that you take for yourself, and that way you almost have an infinite loop of income. Now obviously there are flaws in this model, but the core principles and the very basics of it are very true. A simple example would be to take, let's say, £500,000 that you've got invested. That £500,000 on 3% per year would be returning you £15,000, which could be used to supplement your hybrid retirement lifestyle. Likewise, if you take £1 million invested and apply the 4% rule, the 3% income that you get from that £1 million would be £30,000 per year, which again can be used to supplement your hybrid retirement lifestyle. And taking out this income, whether it's the £15,000 or £30,000 or even more if you have more money invested, doesn't actually touch the principal investment. So if you have a £500,000 investment producing £15,000 at 3% that you pull out, that £500,000 does not decrease as it's also growing. Remember, if the asset's growing by 8% and you're only taking 3% out, then we still have a 5% growth. So the asset will continue to grow regardless of whether you take the income out or not. So that is how you are able to retire early. If you follow the key principles I've laid out in this video, according to history, you will most likely be able to retire early. Now, is this for everyone? Probably not, but it's definitely something that I've been researching, definitely something that I'm looking forward to exploring further and putting into practice within my own investments and saving habits. If you found this at all informative, please consider smashing the like button so that we can teach and inform some more people, and so that this channel is pushed out a bit more in the YouTube algorithm. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.